Hello, welcome to Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Jean-Emile Jamil, looking at your latest news from across the continent. And it all begins with these headlines. Swedish-Eritrean journalist Dawit Issak, imprisoned without charge for over 23 years, is awarded the Swedish Edelstam Prize for his fight for freedom of expression. Then as Senegal's parliamentary elections approach, Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko urges revenge for attacks on his supporters, escalating violence between rival parties. Rights groups warn of dangerous rhetoric and growing tensions ahead of the vote. And Cynthia Stimpel, the woman who exposed corruption at South African Airways during the years of state capture, is embarking on a 700-kilometre hike to highlight the need for greater whistleblower protection in the country. Welcome to the show here on France 24. We start this edition with a Swedish-Eritrean journalist by the name of Dawit Issak, who has been held without charge or contact in an Eritrean prison for more than 23 years. Dawit was among a group of around 24 people, including cabinet ministers, members of parliament and independent journalists, seized in a purge back in September 2001. On Monday, the 60-year-old was awarded the Swedish Edelstam Prize for his fight for freedom of expression. Our regional correspondent, Olivia Bizot, brings us more.
Dawit Issak has been in prison for the past 23 years in Eritrea, without trial, without charge, and with no word from the government about his whereabouts or his health. Issak set up Eritrea's first independent newspaper, and in 2001 he was arrested after publishing articles calling for democratic freedoms. The current government, led by President Isaias Afwerki, has been in power since the country gained independence in 1993. Under his authoritarian grip, all political opposition has been crushed and any dissent is harshly punished. Now, in recognition of Isaac's courage in the face of this injustice, he's been awarded the Edelstam Prize, one of Sweden's highest honours for human rights. Earlier today, I called Eritrea's Minister of Information, Yemane Meskel, to get a reaction. He told me that this is an old story, that the country has been very clear on its policies, before telling me to stop wasting his time, and then he abruptly hung up. Meanwhile, international organisations like Reporters Without Borders have said that they will remain mobilised until Issak is released from prison. The award will be handed over to Isaac's daughter in Stockholm on November the 19th.
So that makes him one of the longest held journalists in the world, in that country, Dawit Issak. Well, Radio Arena is Eritrea's only independent media outlet. It's been broadcasting from a Paris apartment for 15 years, offering trusted news in a country where free speech is almost completely repressed. But now, facing severe funding shortages, the tiny station risks shutting down. With its team halved and under constant threat, it remains a vital lifeline for Eritreans despite its struggles. Emily Boyle reports.
The voice of hope lives hidden away in a tiny Paris apartment. These are the headquarters of Radio Arena, the last independent Eritrean media still broadcasting. After 15 years of providing trustworthy and independent reporting to people in one of the world's most repressive countries, the radio station risks going off air for lack of funding.
In Eritrea in 2001, Eritrean government decided to close all the media, private media. So at some point, we only hear the government's voice, which is merely propaganda, so we want to hear the voice of the public.
A 2017 study estimated that around 500,000 people tune in to listen at least once a week.
So we prefer to stay on satellite, so it would be easily accessible for the public and for us, reliable.
In 2024, the country was ranked last in Reporters Without Borders' Freedom of the Press Index. The country is notorious for detaining journalists longer than any country in the world.
There are countries where it is difficult to be a journalist. In Eritrea, there is no journalism. The oldest journalists have been in prison since 2001. There is no media. The only outlets that remain are state-affiliated outlets that are content to carry out propaganda.
Although thousands of cyber attacks target the radio station, the Arena team has continued to broadcast. Despite their resilience, a drastic drop in funding from their supporters might take them off the air, which would bring an information blackout in one of the world's most repressive countries.
The importance of getting information. Well, on that note, Chad has officially licensed Elon Musk's Starlink satellite internet, aiming to improve connectivity in the country where only 12% of the population had internet access back in 2022. The country's communications minister has highlighted that Starlink service will help bridge the digital gap, especially in remote areas, and support the development of tech startups. While Starlink faces regulatory challenges across Africa, it's already active in several countries, ranging from Nigeria to South Sudan and even Eswatini and Sierra Leone. Regarding Chad, Elon Musk celebrated the move with a post on X, marking another step in expanding internet access to underserved regions. Let's move on to Senegal. The country is approaching its parliamentary elections on November 17th. But tensions are rising high, with Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko urging his Pastef supporters to avenge alleged attacks on them during the campaign. Violent clashes have erupted between rival parties, and rights groups warn of dangerously inflammatory rhetoric. With the nation on edge, calls for moderation and calm have also grown louder ahead of the crucial vote. Caitlin Kelly in Dakar has more.
May each patriot they have attacked and injured be proportionally avenged. That's what Prime Minister Sonko told his supporters on social media. A rather shocking statement that comes as violence, both physical and verbal, is escalating on the campaign trail here in Senegal. Just yesterday in Saint Louis, northern Senegal, Sonko supporters clashed with members of the opposition coalition Sam Sakadou. And witnesses say that members of leader Bartholomew Dias's security detail attacked Sonko supporting shopkeepers in a local market. 81 people were arrested. This incident has sparked widespread response here in Senegal. The opposition coalition has condemned what they describe as the call to murder from the Prime Minister. And rights defender Alione Tine has said that politicians need to exercise moderation and wisdom in their rhetoric, and has urged the Ministry of Interior to bring party representatives together to avoid further harm. This all comes after a period of relative calm here in Senegal following unrest and violence during the presidential elections. But now civil society members are concerned about escalating levels of violence during the first week of the campaign. The Minister of Interior have called for calm as the Senegalese go to the polls in just 5 days, and there are hopes that this unrest will not repeat itself.
Let's stay in the region and actually to the waters around Senegal, where European fishing vessels are now set to stop operations after the EU-Senegal fishing agreement expires on November 17th. That's the same day as those parliamentary elections. The European Commission cited Senegal's failure to tackle illegal fishing and improve monitoring systems before the end of the deal. Despite fishing being a crucial part of the economy, Senegal's leaders themselves have continually criticized foreign competition. Laurent Bestecker takes a look.
The agreement was widely criticized by Dakar, but in the end it was the EU which decided to scrap it. From next Sunday onwards, European vessels won't be allowed to fish in the territorial waters of Senegal after Brussels slammed the country's insufficient response to illegal fishing.
The European Union does not wish to renew fishing agreements with countries known to have problems with illegal fishing, and where certain controls need to be strengthened in order to combat illegal fishing.
The deal, which was signed in 2014 and renewed in 2019, allowed European vessels to fish up to 10,000 tons of tropical tuna and black hake each year. The EU says its fleets only exploited a fifth of that amount, and that their activities represented less than 1% of total fishing in Senegal. In exchange, Dakar received around 3 million euros a year in financial contributions. The agreement, which will now be suspended indefinitely, had been in the crosshair of Senegalese authorities, who regularly denounce unfair competition by foreign fishing vessels. In May, the government published the list of all the boats allowed to operate in the country's waters, revealing the presence of dozens of Turkish and Chinese ships flying the Senegalese flag. The fishing industry represents more than 3% of Senegal's GDP and generates over 600,000 indirect jobs, making it a vital part of the country's economy.
Staying in West Africa, Ghana is preparing to head to the polls next month. The economy is taking center stage in the battle for the presidency. Former President John Mahama and current Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia are the top contenders, with voters increasingly focused on the country's financial woes. New data reveals that over 80% of Ghanaians are deeply concerned about the economic fallout, especially after a debt restructuring program that has left many struggling. Our correspondent Justice Baidu explores how the crisis is shaping the election and the future of the nation.
You see, they are all elderly people.
These are some members of the Locked Up Investment Holders Forum. Every week, they meet here to demand the Finance Ministry releases their money, which has been held up for around 4 years. Bondholders in Ghana have had to forgo around $5 billion in debt owed them by the government.
It's going to reinforce my voting power. This government has not demonstrated in any way that they have the professionalism and the sensitivity of Ghanaians at heart.
As Ghana prepares for elections in December, the country's economic crisis, which has forced it to seek a $3 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund, weighs heavy on the minds of many voters. To qualify for the IMF package, Ghana had to restructure its crippling debt, which included around $6 billion of domestic debt owed to bondholders. The exercise has affected thousands, with many having interest on their investments slashed.
I was investing in the kids' future by investing in an account for them. That money has also been locked up. So really, if in their future, the government takes away and takes from the future of your children.
The leading candidates for the election have both made lofty promises to build back the economy and create jobs. But many feel the reality may be different no matter who wins.
Political parties are making promises as though there is no IMF program ongoing. They are making promises as though as soon as they win, things will turn out for their favor. It's simply because our politics is the politics of promises. The more promises you're able to make, it doesn't matter if you're able to deliver on them, the better it is for you.
Ghana is seen as a model for democracy in the sub-region. This will be its 9th elections since multi-party rule returned in 1992.
In the late 2010s, former president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, was implicated in state capture with the notorious Gupta family, leading to billions in taxpayer losses. Whistleblowers risking their safety exposed this corruption, but many faced retaliation, including job loss and even assassination. Cynthia Stimpel exposed the corruption at the time of late South African Airways chairperson Dudu Myeni. Now she's walking 700 kilometers along the Cape Camino to raise awareness about the dangers faced by those who speak out. This report by Tom Canetti, Caroline Dumais and Stefan Carstens with Pool Africa.
Cynthia Stimpel lost her job at South African Airways after she exposed corruption within the board. Now, she's raising awareness for other whistleblowers who sacrifice everything, even their lives. As group treasurer, Cynthia exposed corrupt tenders that cost taxpayers millions of dollars. But being a whistleblower in South Africa is a dangerous job. In 2021, Babita Deokran was assassinated in her car outside her Johannesburg home after she blew the whistle on the Department of Health. Cynthia says more needs to be done to protect people like Babita.
They caught the people who shot her. And those people were last year convicted and they're now in prison. But they haven't caught the mastermind, the person who gave the instructions for her to be shot. And that's where the injustice is.
The Zondo Commission was established to investigate how former President Jacob Zuma captured state bodies with other corrupt politicians and the notorious Gupta family during a period referred to as state capture. The Commission heard from 300 witnesses over 4 years and recommended Zuma be investigated for corruption. But he refused to testify and only spent 2 months behind bars for contempt of court. Dr. Liesl Groenwald says people have risked their lives to expose crimes that have gone unpunished.
Justice could be served for the people of South Africa and the whistleblowers if those who have been implicated in state capture if they are held accountable. We have to hold people accountable. Otherwise, what is the use?
It's estimated that state capture costs South African taxpayers the equivalent of $100 billion.
That's all the news from around Africa. There's more coming up on France 24. We'll see you soon.
France 24, every art form.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.